You'll soon be cutting less and quilting more. Hello, I'm Deborah Rubles. I live in Lebanon, Missouri. I'm the author of The Quilter's Cutting Guide to Sliding Ruler Method. I published this book in May of 2017 in Springfield, Missouri. If you follow the instructions and techniques in it, you'll soon be cutting less and quilting more. Today's cutting snippet is going to be about cutting 5-inch squares. Now, a lot of you may be buying charm packs. I have bought some, but I like to cut my own charm packs or cut my own 5-inch squares. And I have made many scrap quilts out of my 5-inch squares. So here's just a stack of them just to show you, for instance, some of the 5-inch squares that I cut. Usually what I'll do is that if I have less than a half a yard of fabric left over from a project, then I'll go ahead and cut that leftover fabric into either 5-inch squares or 2.5-inch strips. So then I'm making my collection of my charm packs or my 5-inch squares, or also if I cut 2.5-inch strips, then I have my jelly roll collection of scrappy 2.5-inch strips. So my fabric is still folded in half, and then I fold it in half again, and we're going to cut 5-inch squares out of this. And the first thing I'll do is square my fabric using the 2-ruler method, which is explained in chapter 2 of my book. There's my straight edge. And then we're going to cut 5-inch strips. Now, first, I'm looking at this fabric, and I don't think it's 10 inches wide. So let me see if I can get 2 strips. No, it's 9.25 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to cut a 2.5-inch strip for future use, and then I'll cut a 5-inch strip. And the way that I like to do it is in one step, or in one slide. So 2.5 plus 5 is 7.5. So I'm actually going to line up the 7.5 on my ruler on that straight edge fabric that I just cut. I've got 7.5. I'm also lining up a line on the fold at the bottom, and then you cut. So I've just cut a 7.5-inch piece. Now I'm just going to slide it over 2.5 inches so that we have now cut. Here's our 2-inch strip, and then here's the 5-inch strip that's left over. So we'll put this aside because I'm interested in this to do 5-inch squares. So I'm just going to, remember this is folded twice, so you're cutting through 4 layers. So when I get done cutting this, I'm going to have 4 here and 4 here. I'm going to have 8 total 5-inch squares. I'm just lining this up on a line on the cutting mat, and I'm going to square the left edge here. Now you have 2 options here. You can do the math in your head, or you can go to the Quilter's Cutting Guide. So in this, since I'm promoting my book, is that we're going to go ahead and turn it to the 5-inch tab. And we're looking for 5-inch because we are going to cut 2 5-inch cuts so that we have our 5-inch square. And the first column is the number of strips needed, so we need 2. So it says cut on 10, so which means I put the 10 on the ruler on that straight edge I just cut. And I'm lining up a line down at the bottom, and you cut on the right. And then you just simply slide it over to the 5, and I'm done. This takes half the cuts and half the steps if you practice and get into the habit of cutting this way, multiple ways. Now I have another piece of fabric here. I think this one is 10 inches wide. It's folded in half, and then it's folded in half again. And when we cut, you always want to make sure the fold's at your belly because you're using that fold for a straight edge. So we're going to square it with 2 rulers. Okay, and this piece of fabric is 11 inches. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the 10 on the straight edge and cut. Slide it over to the 5. There's my 2 strips. And not that I'm in a race or anything, but I can show you how quick it is to get this cutting done. I'm lining them up on a line in the cutting mat. I'm actually squaring the left now. And then I'm bringing it over in the 10 again. I've lined up here, I've lined up here, and then you cut. Slide it over to the 5, and we just cut. Remember, there's 4 in each stack. We just cut our 16 5.5 inch. Probably about half the time. Some of you may still be squaring your fabric, or some of you may be still cutting out the 5 inches from that first piece of fabric. I don't know. But if you follow the instructions and the techniques that are in the Quilter's Cutting Guide, you'll soon be cutting less and quilting more. So that's your cutting snippet today from Deborah Rubles, author of the Quilter's Cutting Guide. You can purchase this book at www.quilterscuttingguide.com. Thank you.